Now, let me move on to Liz Cheney. There's so many things I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to run out of time here if I don't hurry up. She no offense intended, but she had her ass kicked up around her shoulder blades last night. She really did yesterday by Harriet Hageman. Who in the hell is Harriet Hageman? You know who she is? She's nobody. She's like you and me. She's just, nobody in particular. I don't mean to say that you or I are nobody, but nobody in particular. Who's ever heard of her? Nobody has. She's a lawyer in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She didn't have a political following. Nobody's ever heard of her until she was lifted up by God's emissary on earth, Donald Jesus Trump. Then all of a sudden she became somebody. She became the destroyer, the woman, the candidate that Trump backed in order to slice Liz Cheney off at the knees. Because Liz Cheney is absolutely destroying this filthy, putrid son of a bitch, Donald Trump. Well, let me jump to the bottom line of the Liz Cheney story. And that is this. I think this is probably a blessing in disguise for her. And ultimately for us, normal people. And that is Liz Cheney is becoming, and I support this fully, obsessed, because I am too, with seeing the destruction of Donald Trump. However you want to interpret the word destruction, I really don't give a shit. But for me, destruction means he doesn't exist anymore and has no influence on the further destruction of this Democratic Republic. So Cheney seems focused on that. And in that regard, I completely support her. Even though she voted with Trump 97% of the time when she was a member of Congress, she's a complete right-winger, a complete conservative Republican, or I should say right-wing Republican. She's not a Christian terrorist, but she is a conservative right-wing Republican, moving very close to the idea of fascism, I think, in her legislative history, but never quite stepped over the line, even though I've accused her of that over the years in her actions or inactions, where she had a front row seat in watching the destruction of this Democratic Republic by Trump and the Christian terrorists. And it wasn't until January 6th, 2021, that all of a sudden Liz Cheney became, dare I use the term, woke to what these fuckers were doing. But back to Harriet Hageman, just a complete nobody. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but a complete nobody until she was lifted up by God's own emissary, Donald Trump. So with 90% of the vote counted early this morning, she beat Liz Cheney by about 30 percentage points. Not quite as bad as Trump beat Joe Biden in the presidential election in Wyoming. What the fuck is wrong with Wyoming? But damn near. Now, Cheney's loss was anticipated. And it was also anticipated it was going to be a real ass kicking, which it was. What this means is that the person who has been, the New York Times calls her the leading Republican voice against Mr. Trump. I think she's one of the leading voices against Trump. Republican, Democrat, Independent, that doesn't make any difference who. I mean, she is the most erudite, the most clearly definitional of what this son of a bitch Trump has done and is doing. But she's also the vice chairwoman of the committee investigating the Capitol attack. And next year, she's no longer going to have her perch in Congress from which to take her battle to the son of a bitch who poses a grave threat to American democracy, Donald Trump. But I don't think that is going to, as a matter of fact, I think she's going to have a stronger voice now. You know, Liz Cheney, I've heard this from some of the commentators on television. I'm sure you've heard it too. Liz Cheney went from being a typical ultra-conservative Republican, third term, no big deal. but not really that big of a voice. Yeah, she was number 3 in the Republican Party hierarchy in the House until she, quote, went rogue, end quote, and decided that her oath meant something, her oath to the Constitution. But she wasn't what she is now. And by God, she has become what she is now. She is the leading voice, in my opinion, on the political scene, the leading voice of attack against this Nazi, filthy, pig-fucking Donald Trump. And, you know, I've said this before, too. That puts me in the awkward position of supporting part of what Liz Cheney proposes and rejecting the rest of it. You know, I support that 10%. Well, it's no longer 10%, but the 10% of her political career that was focused on destroying Donald Trump. Now that she doesn't have a political career, at least not right now, that 10% is ballooned to what, 90%? So, yeah, I support Liz Cheney in her efforts to eliminate Donald Trump. Just eliminate this filthy pig from the scene. I'm so sick of his name. Oh my God. Now, if she runs for president in 2024 against Trump, assuming Trump would run, if she runs in a primary against Trump, Trump will beat her in the primary. But if she has a big enough base, maybe she won't even run a Republican primary against Trump. If she runs as an independent, think there have been a couple of independents who have run. George Wallace immediately comes to mind. I don't want to talk about him, but Anderson, what was his name? Not Eugene Anderson, but there have been a couple, I can't think of their names right now, who have run as independents. And no, they never got elected, but they did cause, well, that's one of the reasons that I think that Al Gore lost in 2000 was because of the independent campaign run by Nader, which sucked off just enough votes to make a difference, especially in Florida. So independent party candidates can have a profound effect on the outcome of an election. So if Liz Cheney decides, and I think she's putting together a political party, I think that's what I've heard, a political party that will consist of people who, in this fantasy situation of Democrats, Republicans, Independents, who will work together to restore this democratic republic to something still on the path to what the framers had in mind, even though they were all slavers, but what they had in mind when they put the Constitution together. And in that regard, I would support her. If she does that, and if it is right-wing leaning, Republican leaning, in a general election between a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent party, where are the votes going to suck from? Well, the consensus right now seems to be that the votes would come from disgruntled Republicans who want to continue as Republicans, but they don't want to continue as Christian terrorists. They don't want to continue as neo-fascists. They want to continue as Republicans. And Liz Cheney would be their candidate, wouldn't she? Now, whatever cooperation she would get from Democrats or independents is arguable, but we may be in a position 2 years from now when the line between Democrat and Republican is going to be so blurred that it might be necessary to vote for someone like Liz Cheney. Going back to what happened yesterday, she conceded defeat at just about the same moment that the Associated Press called the race. And that suggested that she was setting a model for accepting the will of the voters. She didn't start squealing and farting and wheezing like the Christian terrorists do about, oh, well, I was robbed. Oh, well, there was cheating. Oh, what about the mail-in ballots? Oh, well, the Democrats did this and the Democrats did, and the blah, 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 blah. No, this is what she said at her concession speech. Quote, Harriet Hageman has received the most votes in this primary. She won. End quote. How much simpler can that be, right? And she went on to implore Americans to fight back against the orange vomit and others, including this Harriet Hageman, who deny that in 2020, the orange vomit lost the presidential election. She said this, quote, no citizen of this republic is a bystander. We cannot abandon the truth and remain a free nation, end quote. Now, compare that to what this Hageman thing said when she claimed victory. She lashed Liz Cheney and what she called the elites in Washington. We're fed up with the January 6th Commission. We're fed up with Liz Cheney. Yeah? Well, apparently you're right, Harriet. Apparently you're right where it concerns the citizens of Wyoming. But I would just ask Harriet and the citizens of Wyoming, are you fed up because Liz Cheney went to work in trying to preserve the Constitution of the United States? Were you fed up because Liz Cheney would not buy into the bullshit story that Trump has put out there that he actually won the election? He lost it twice. Were you fed up, Harriet, and citizens of Wyoming, since that's where we're focused right now, were you fed up with the idea that lying fucking Christian Nazis are slowly taking over the political process in this country? Do you understand what that means? What ultimately it's going to do? You squealing little pigs who screech and stand on your hind legs every time Trump's name is mentioned. Do you not realize that eventually you are going to walk up the ramp into the abattoir like all good squealing pigs do? You don't get that? I guess not. We're fed up with Liz Cheney, Hageman said. Well, talk about grace in winning. Well, this bitch has none, does she? None. However, this repudiation in Wyoming of Liz Cheney made it very clear, the voters in that state, their appetite for retribution against anybody who openly confronts Donald Jesus fucking Trump. You are confronting the Messiah's little brother. So we will send you to perdition, bitch. Wow. Wow. And you take a look at the multiple investigations and criminal investigations that this scum-sucking Trump is involved in. I would like to ask the people of Wyoming, I doubt if there's anybody in Wyoming who listens to this podcast, but I'd like to ask them, what in the fuck are you using as a standard when you vote either directly or by proxy for Donald Trump? What the fuck are you using? What is your yardstick of respect for the Constitution, or respect for the democratic process, or respect for the truth? I'd like to know, because maybe you citizens of Wyoming and you other Trump fucking fools, maybe you know something I don't, and maybe I should know, huh? Just kidding. Wow. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.